Something changed overnight. If you went to sleep last night carrying emotional weight, unresolved tension, a decision sitting unfinished, a conversation that kept replaying in your mind, you may have woken up this morning with that same weight, but feeling different. Heavier maybe, or sharper, like the patience you had been maintaining around something has quietly run out. That is February 23rd arriving. The last several days have been building toward this. The solar eclipse on February 17th cracked something open. February 22nd brought the pressure of that crack into full feeling, the emotional intensity, the restlessness, the clarity you could not quite look away from. Today, something shifts in the energy. The internal pressure that has been building is no longer content to stay internal. It is looking for an exit, and whether you direct it consciously or it finds its own way out, movement is happening today. This video is going to explain exactly what is astrologically active on February 23rd, why today produces the urge to act, confront, or decide, and how to make sure you are moving from your clearest place rather than from the pressure alone. Stay with this. To understand what is shifting today, you need a clear picture of two specific planetary influences that are particularly active right now. The moon has been moving through an emotionally loaded position over the past day. As it continues its transit, it forms tension aspects, angular relationships with other planets that create friction, urgency, and emotional charge. The moon governs your moment-to-moment emotional experience, your instinctual responses, the part of you that reacts before reason has a chance to weigh in. When the moon is under tension, the emotional body becomes less patient, less tolerant of ongoing ambiguity, and more insistent on resolution. That is the lunar influence active today. Mars is the other major force in play. Mars governs action, drive, assertion, confrontation, and the impulse to move. It rules the part of you that pushes forward, that says enough, that reaches for what it wants and pushes back against what it does not. In the days following an eclipse, Mars energy often functions as the force that converts whatever the eclipse surfaced into actual movement. The eclipse identifies. The pressure builds. Mars demands the action. What this combination creates on February 23rd is a strong internal push toward externalizing what has been internal. Thoughts that have been circling privately start pressing toward expression. Decisions that have been sitting in an unfinished state start demanding resolution. Anger that has been managed quietly becomes harder to contain. Clarity that was sharp but still held inward begins looking for concrete form. This is why today carries an elevated risk of impulsivity, and also an elevated opportunity for genuine decisive action. The same energy that can produce a reactive outburst can, when channeled consciously, produce the most aligned and necessary move you have made in months. The distinction lies entirely in whether you are working with the energy or being driven by it. There is a specific process happening between February 22nd and February 23rd that is worth understanding clearly, because once you see it, the intensity of today makes a lot more sense. Emotional pressure has a threshold. For a period of time, days, sometimes weeks, you can carry internal tension while maintaining external stability. You know something needs to change, but you continue managing it. You feel the weight of an unspoken truth, but you continue finding ways around saying it. You sense that a decision has already been made somewhere inside you, but you continue deferring the moment of commitment. That management takes energy, and it has limits. What February 22nd did was bring most people close to that threshold. The eclipse material had fully surfaced. The emotional weight had become impossible to stay comfortable inside of. And yet many people ended yesterday still carrying it, still holding the unspoken conversation, still sitting with the unmade decision, still containing what needed to move. February 23rd is where the container breaks. The internal becomes external today. Suppressed conversations surface, sometimes because you initiate them, sometimes because someone else does, and sometimes because a situation creates the opening whether you were ready for it or not. Decisions that felt like they could wait reveal themselves as already decided. The part of you that has been patient with an ongoing situation reaches the limit of that patience. Relationship dynamics are particularly susceptible to this shift. When two people have been carrying unspoken material, tension, unmet needs, honest truths that have not been directly expressed, Mars energy makes that silence untenable. Something gets said, a line gets drawn, an honest reckoning surfaces. For some relationships, this is the moment a necessary and clearing conversation finally happens. For others, it is the moment where what was already ending reaches its explicit conclusion. The key thing to understand is that this movement is not random. It is the natural completion of a process that the eclipse set in motion. The eclipse opened the pressure point. The days following built the intensity. Today the energy converts. The people who will feel February 23rd most acutely are the ones carrying the most compressed energy right now. The ones for whom internal management has been running at its highest cost. If you have been avoiding a confrontation you know is necessary, today is going to make that avoidance feel very costly. The emotional charge around the avoided situation has been increasing steadily, and today's Mars influence is essentially removing the internal buffer that has been making avoidance possible. The confrontation you have been delaying is going to feel much closer today. Either you initiate it, or the situation finds its own way to initiate it for you. If you have been delaying a major choice, sitting deliberately in the uncertainty of not yet deciding, today that position becomes difficult to maintain. The energy available on February 23rd does not support extended suspension well. Something in you has been working toward a decision underneath your conscious stalling, and today that underlying process tends to surface in a recognizable way. You may wake up today simply knowing, or you may find that external circumstances tip the balance, making it clear that the decision is no longer deferrable. People caught between two paths, two relationships, two professional directions, two versions of a life, feel today with particular sharpness. The middle position, which required balancing two competing realities, gets destabilized by this energy. Something moves. One path becomes obviously more real than the other, or the cost of continuing to stand between them becomes sharp enough that you choose, finally, because not choosing has become more painful than choosing. If you have been carrying anger or frustration that you have been managing carefully, keeping it contained, keeping it reasonable, keeping it from landing directly on the situation or person it is actually about, today the management becomes harder. Anger that has been compressed tends to look for exit points. Sometimes it finds them productively. Sometimes it finds them sideways, landing on the wrong target or in the wrong moment. The awareness of this dynamic is itself a form of protection. If you know the anger is present and has been contained, you can make a deliberate choice about where and how it moves. February 23rd tends to produce recognizable patterns of behavior across a lot of people simultaneously. You may notice some of these in yourself or in people around you. The sudden urge to send a message you have been composing mentally for days, finally putting it into words and pressing send. The message that breaks a silence that had been going on too long. For some people this will be the right move, arriving at exactly the right moment. For others, the urge will be real, but the timing will need more thought before acting on it. Breaking a silence in person, initiating the conversation that has been sitting unstarted, walking into a room and finally saying the thing. This is one of the most common expressions of February 23rd energy. The patience for continued silence expires and the words come out. Some people will use this energy to cut something off, a situation, a relationship, a commitment that has already been failing in function even while it continued in form. The decision to end something often feels sudden, even when it has actually been years in the making. Today that internal accumulation reaches a tipping point and the decision lands in the external world. Others will make a bold move in a direction they have been considering but hesitating on. An application submitted, a commitment made, a clear yes given to something that has been receiving maybe for too long. The fear does not disappear, but today it becomes less powerful than the forward pull. Emotional outbursts are also a real expression of this energy and worth naming plainly. When compressed material finds a sudden exit point, it does not always do so cleanly. You may find yourself more reactive than intended, or someone around you may respond with more intensity than you expected. That intensity is real and is rarely entirely about the immediate situation. And then there is sudden clarity, one of the more valuable expressions of this day. The kind that arrives without build-up, where something you have been turning over for weeks suddenly sits still, and you see it plainly. That clarity is worth trusting. Write it down immediately. Mars energy is powerful and useful. It is also, when unexamined, exactly the kind of force that produces decisions you will be dealing with the consequences of for a long time. The primary risk today is mistaking urgency for clarity. Urgency is a feeling. Clarity is a knowing. They can arrive together, and when they do, the conditions for good decisive action are genuinely present. But urgency can also arrive alone, driven purely by the accumulated pressure needing release, and in those moments the action it produces is reactive rather than aligned. The practical question to ask yourself before any significant action today: would I make this same decision if I were not feeling this level of pressure right now? If the answer is yes, if the action you are considering reflects something you have been genuinely moving toward, something the eclipse confirmed rather than created, then the urgency is likely serving the clarity. If the answer is honestly uncertain, slow down. Burning bridges is a real risk. When someone has been holding frustration for a long time and it finally finds expression, it often carries more charge than the immediate situation warrants. Words said in that charge can close doors that did not necessarily need to be closed, damage relationships that had real value, or communicate in ways that permanently reframe how someone sees you. The truth that needs to be expressed can be expressed without the full weight of accumulated frustration behind it. Emotional projection is another pattern to watch. When internal pressure is high and looking for an exit point, it has a tendency to land on whoever or whatever is most immediately available, which is not always the actual source of the pressure. The person who frustrates you today may be carrying a fraction of the charge that is actually about someone or something else entirely. Noticing that dynamic before you act is worth the pause. The risk of completely retreating is also real and worth naming. Some people respond to Mars pressure by going in the opposite direction, shutting down entirely, withdrawing from all potential confrontation, going silent. That retreat is its own form of reactive behavior, and it tends to extend cycles rather than complete them. The energy available today is genuinely useful. Channeled consciously, it can move things that have needed to move for a long time. Before any significant action, take a pause long enough for the first wave of emotional charge to settle. The pause does not need to be long. 20 minutes is often enough to separate what is reaction from what is genuine knowing. The real clarity, the kind that is actually worth acting on, tends to remain steady once the immediate emotional spike passes. Reactive impulses tend to lose some of their urgency once the pressure has had a few minutes to settle. Identify the core truth underneath the impulse to act. If you want to send a message, what is the actual thing you need to communicate? Strip away the charge, the accumulated frustration, the need to be understood. What is the one real thing that needs to be said? Starting from that core truth produces a very different communication than starting from the full weight of everything you have been carrying. When you act today, and you should act, this energy is meant to move things. Act from the clearest version of your knowing. The eclipse already identified what is ready to shift. February 22nd brought that into full feeling. Today you have the energy to actually move it. Use that energy to make one aligned, deliberate move in the direction you have already identified as necessary. That is the right use of this day. And specifically around conversations, be honest, be direct, and work to stay regulated while you do it. The conversation that needs to happen can be had without the full weight of unprocessed emotion behind it. In fact, the conversation lands better without that weight. The The person across from you hears the actual content more clearly when it is not arriving inside a charge they then have to defend against. It helps to see February 17th through 23rd as a single continuous process, because that is what it is. The solar eclipse on February 17th was a point of interruption and revelation. Eclipses do not create new material. They surface what was already present, already operating, already affecting your life in ways that had not yet been fully acknowledged. The eclipse made visible whatever in your life was misaligned, ready to shift, or requiring honest confrontation. February 22nd was the pressure phase. The eclipse material had surfaced, the clarity was available, and the emotional body was processing all of it simultaneously. The pressure became significant enough to be genuinely difficult to manage around. Most people ended that day knowing something they could not unknow about a relationship, a situation, a direction their life was or was not heading. February 23rd is the conversion point, the moment where internal knowing becomes external movement, where the emotional processing of the last week finds its way into the actual world, into words spoken, decisions made, actions taken. This is the phase where the eclipse cycle produces its tangible results. This is momentum, and it is moving in a direction the eclipse already confirmed. Your job today is not to generate energy you do not have. The energy is already present and running high. Your job is to direct it, to make sure the movement happening today reflects your clearest intentions rather than your most pressured reactions. For any decision that would be difficult or impossible to reverse, ending a significant relationship, making a major financial commitment, leaving a job, cutting off contact with someone important, apply a 24-hour pause before acting. This is specific, 24 hours. The clarity that is driving you toward that decision today, if it is genuine, will still be present tomorrow. The urgency will have settled enough that you can assess whether the decision is coming from knowing or from pressure. If it is knowing, act tomorrow with full confidence. If it is pressure, you will be glad you waited. For conversations that need to happen, and several of them probably do, have them today. Waiting further on those serves no one. The conversation will only become harder to approach as the days go on. Go in having thought through the core thing you need to say. Speak from that core. Stay in the room through the discomfort of the other person's response. Move forward today. Whatever the eclipse confirmed is ready to shift. Whatever February 22nd made clear, take a step in that direction. A concrete, real step. Not a plan to take a step. An actual movement. This is the day designed for that. And specifically, avoid retreating into silence. The temptation to go quiet, to withdraw and let the pressure subside without addressing what is generating it is real. But silence at this point in the cycle is not neutral. It compounds. The material does not dissipate. It accumulates more charge while you are silent, and the next time you encounter it, the weight will be heavier. Stay present with what this week has been surfacing and use today's energy to engage with it. February 23rd is a turning point inside one of the more significant energetic sequences of this year. The eclipse set it in motion. The days that followed built the pressure. Today the energy moves. You are not at the mercy of this. The energy that is active right now, the urgency, the push toward action, the inability to stay comfortable in what has been staying comfortable, that is not something happening to you. It is something moving through you in response to real conditions in your life. And you have a real say in how it lands. The viewer who understands what today is and meets it consciously, who uses the action impulse to make a genuine aligned move, who has the honest conversation with some degree of regulation, who directs the energy rather than being carried by it. That person comes out of this week having actually shifted something. Not in abstract terms, in the real, tangible structure of their daily life. You have the understanding. You have the energy. Today is the day to use both. Move consciously and move now.